4 hours 17 minutes and 32 seconds local time. USS Dwight D. Eisenhower was 104 nautical miles southeast of Bandar Abbas when the first Iranian targeting burst hit the strike group's electronic support receivers. On the surface plot, the threat looked simple and already bad. 12 one-way attack drones from bearing 0, 1, 8, 6 sea-skimming cruise missiles from bearing 341, and 4 fast contacts, still below firm classification, moving out of the coastal clutter at 46 knots. The carrier had just launched the first combat air patrol of the Blockade operation 11 minutes earlier. Its outer screen was still stretching into position. The danger was immediate. If even one cruise missile reached the flight deck, the blockade could end before sunrise. But what operators were seeing was not the full problem. The drones were late, the cruise missiles were too clean, the geometry was wrong, and in 97 seconds, the next layer of the attack would cross the line where interception stopped being theory and became damage control. To understand what is happening, you need to understand what America's blockade actually looked like at 4 that morning. It was not a wall of ships. It was a timed control box at the mouth of the Gulf, built from radar coverage, air patrol cycles, data link tracks, and the legal declaration that any armed vessel moving to break the exclusion lane would be stopped. Eisenhower was the center of that system, not because it was the biggest ship, but because its air wing made the blockade real. Take away the flight deck, and the blockade became a statement with no reach. Iran understood that. Iran also understood it did not need to sink the carrier to break the operation. It only needed to force the carrier to turn away, suspend launches, and move far enough south to reopen the corridor for the first outbound convoy. That was the visible logic. The hidden logic was worse. What the system believed was happening was not what was actually happening. The first problem was visible. The second problem was the one that mattered. The visible problem was the drone and cruise missile raid. The second problem was targeting. Iran did not need to beat Aegis in a fair fight. Iran needed the strike group to reveal itself, commit its interceptors, light its radars, and confirm the exact center of the American formation at the exact second the real shooters were ready. Iran did not design the weapon to defeat the defense. Iran designed it to make the defense irrelevant. The real danger was somewhere else. 3 hours earlier, at 1:26, Chief Warrant Officer Leah Ortega had filed a low-priority note from the Flag Intelligence Support Cell on Eisenhower. She was not in command. She was not in the air defense chair. She was a signals exploitation specialist whose job was usually ignored until something stopped making sense. Her note was about a civilian roll-on cargo ship 63 nautical miles north of Keshem Island, identifying itself as Nareen 7. Its AIS identity had changed 3 times in 44 minutes. Its navigation radar was transmitting in disciplined 7-second bursts, then going dark, then returning on the same bearing. Civilian ships do not do that. Military queuing relays do. Ortega logged it, attached the pulse pattern, and sent the warning across the strike group watch network. No one dismissed it. No one acted on it either. At 4:12, when the blockade notice went live, the same burst pattern returned. At 4:15, Ortega saw another anomaly. A coastal fire control radar west of Bandar Jask came up for 11 seconds, shut down, then came up again 28 miles farther east in the electronic picture. Not a relocation, a handoff. Somebody was stitching a composite track. The visible attack was only the outer layer. By 4 hours, 18 minutes and 1 second, USS Mason and USS Thomas Hudner had gone to full air defense posture. SPY-1DV arrays were painting the northern sector. An E-2D Hawkeye from Vol. 123 was 146 nautical miles to the southwest, holding at 24,000 feet and pushing track quality back through cooperative engagement capability. The obvious response was speed and volume. Classify, assign, shoot. At 4 hours, 18 minutes and 9 seconds, Mason launched 2 SM-6 interceptors against the highest confidence inbound tracks. At 4 hours, 18 minutes, and 16 seconds, Hudner fired 4 ESSMs at the drone cluster to reduce clutter near the formation. At 4 hours, 18 minutes, and 24 seconds, Eisenhower ordered a 19-degree starboard turn to tighten its recovery geometry and present less predictable deck alignment to the incoming raid. That was the moment Ortega stood up from her console and said the sentence that changed the fight. "The raid is not the attack. The raid is the confirmation." It took 4 seconds for anyone to answer her. It took 9 more for the answer to matter. At 4 hours, 18 minutes, and 37 seconds, a theater infrared missile warning feed pushed 4 new launch indications from 192 kilometers inland near Hajiabad. Those were not cruise missiles. Their acceleration profile was too steep. Their climb was too hard. The strike group now had 4 probable anti-ship ballistic missiles in flight, and every radar emission from the screen had just told those weapons where the American defense was strongest and where the carrier had turned. To understand why the defense was failing, you need to understand the Iranian timing chain. The drones were not meant to hit first. They were meant to force close-in tracking. The cruise missiles were not meant to score the kill. They were meant to hold the escorts on the wrong bearing and consume mid-course guidance. The ballistic missiles were the real finishers, but even they were not the final move. Ortega's 126 note suddenly explained the missing piece. Marine 7 was not scouting for the first salvo. It was waiting to update the second. The ship was acting as a passive relay, taking electromagnetic data from the screen, matching it with coastal cueing, and transmitting corrected position packets so the ballistic missiles would not aim at where the carrier had been 90 seconds earlier, but where it would be after evasive maneuver. The attack was not built around impact. It was built around reaction. At 4 hours, 18 minutes, and 52 seconds, the strike group had 77 seconds before the ballistic missiles reached their terminal window. Rear Admiral Cole Bennett had to decide whether to keep radiating and trust the intercept chain or cut emissions and risk blindness. Ortega did not ask for more proof. She asked for one action: kill the relay. But that alone would not be fast enough. Narn 7 was 71 nautical miles from the nearest American helicopter. The data packet had probably already gone out. So she asked for the second action too: create a false center. If Iran wanted the carrier's corrected location, give it the wrong one. At 4 hours, 19 minutes, and 1 second, Bennett authorized a split response. Mason stayed hot and kept tracking the visible raid. Hudner cut to emission control brief cycle mode. Eisenhower shifted another 24 degrees starboard and increased to 31 knots. An EA-18G Growler, already airborne on escort duty, was retasked to flood the northern sector with deceptive range gate pull-off and data link noise. A Nulka active missile decoy was fired from the screen on a bearing 026 and climbed away from the formation, transmitting the kind of signature an impatient targeting algorithm would love. What the system believed was happening was not what was actually happening, and now the Americans were feeding that error back into the attack. At 4 hours, 19 minutes, and 18 seconds, the first SM-6 hit a Qatar cruise missile at 38 nautical miles. At 4 hours, 19 minutes, and 23 seconds, a second interceptor missed clean because the target had been spoofed by clutter off Keshem. At 4 hours, 19 minutes, and 29 seconds, 2 ESSMs killed 2 drones, but 7 more kept coming. At 4 hours, 19 minutes, and 34 seconds, the Hawkeye crew reported the ballistic tracks beginning to separate, not toward the ship's live center line, but toward a 0.8 nautical miles east of Eisenhower's actual position. Ortega had been right, but only partly. The decoy had pulled 2 missiles. 2 were still holding the old geometry. The first problem was visible. The second problem was the one that mattered. The first problem could still be shot down. The second problem had to be made stupid. At 4 hours, 19 minutes, and 41 seconds, Bennett released the one option commanders hate because it feels like surrendering initiative: go darker. Mason cut from full continuous track to interval painting. The Hawkeye held the air picture. The Growler kept jamming. Eisenhower dumped speed to 27 knots for 18 seconds, then accelerated again, forcing the ballistic solution to chase a target that no longer matched its last valid update. At 4 hours 19 minutes and 56 seconds, the 4 Iranian missiles entered terminal descent. The first 2 came down on the Nulka Falls Center and detonated 1.4 nautical miles apart, throwing fragmentation into empty water. The third was engaged by an SM-6 at 21 nautical miles and broke up into 3 burning sections, none of which struck a ship. The fourth was the danger Ortega had feared from the start. It had not been lured by the decoy. It had not lost the old position. It was descending on the place where Eisenhower should have been if the carrier had maintained its original turn and speed. But at 4 hours 20 minutes and 7 seconds, the ship was not there. The missile hit 612 yards off the port quarter, detonated in the water column, and showered the stern with fragments. One fragment punctured a deck-edge equipment enclosure. Another cut a fuel service line on the flight deck. No aircraft burned. No catapult was lost. 3 sailors were wounded by splinters. The carrier stayed in the fight. That should have been the end of the crisis. It was not. The visible attack was only the outer layer. At 4 hours 20 minutes and 11 seconds, the 4 fast contacts that had been buried in clutter finally resolved on infrared and surface search. They were not patrol boats. They were explosive drone boats, each carrying an estimated 280 kilograms of shaped charge and driving for the gap between Hudner and the carrier's projected wake. The real danger was somewhere else. Iran had expected the ballistic strike to force Eisenhower into a defensive turn and slow the screen. The drone boats were timed to hit the recovery lane during the confusion. What survived or died in the next 3 minutes would depend on whether the strike group kept fighting the picture it first saw or the attack it had actually entered. Ortega had one more piece from her ignored note. Naran 7 had not only pulsed radar, it had transmitted on a commercial satellite uplink at precisely 4 hours, 16 minutes and 40 seconds and 4 hours, 19 minutes and 4 seconds. Those timestamps matched the start of the raid and the ballistic update window. If the relay had a third role, it was probably surface guidance for the explosive boats. Bennett did not wait for committee discussion. At 4 hours, 20 minutes and 22 seconds, he ordered a direct attack on the relay. A pair of F/A-18E Super Hornets that had just launched from Eisenhower at 4:11 were diverted north. At 4 hours 20 minutes and 48 seconds, one jet locked Naran 7 with its targeting pod. At 4 hours 21 minutes and 6 seconds, a GBU-54 laser JDAM was released from 18,000 feet. At 4 hours 21 minutes and 31 seconds, the bomb hit amidships. The ship did not explode like a munitions barge. It simply broke its uplink, lost power to the radar mast, and began turning dead in the water. That was enough. The 4 drone boats immediately split into 3 different headings, which told Ortega what she needed to know. Their final navigation had been external. Without the relay, they were no longer hunters. They were just fast bombs in the wrong ocean. Mason's 5-inch gun destroyed the first at 8,900 yards. Hudner's MH-60R Seahawk hit the second with an AGM-114 Hellfire at 4,200 yards. The third was cut apart by a burst from Phalanx CIWS at 1,700 yards. The fourth kept coming. It crossed 1,200 yards, then 900, then 600. At 4 hours, 22 minutes and 17 seconds, a rigid hull inflatable launched earlier for force protection put a 5-0 caliber line across the boat's exposed guidance package. It sheared off. The drone boat veered 38 degrees, missed the carrier's wake by 73 yards, and detonated harmlessly 11 seconds later. By 4 hours, 23 minutes and 2 seconds, the original drone wave was down to 2 surviving air contacts, both out of position and losing guidance under Growler jamming. One crashed into the water. The other was destroyed by an F/A-18F with an AIM-9X at 6.4 nautical miles. At 4 hours, 24 minutes and 19 seconds, the strike group had airspace control again. At 4 hours, 26 minutes and 40 seconds, the first blocked merchant vessel attempting to run the exclusion lane turned back toward Bandar Abbas. The blockade held. The aftermath was measured in exact numbers, not rhetoric. USS Dwight D. Eisenhower remained fully operational. Flight operations resumed at 4:37. 3 sailors were wounded. 0 aircraft were lost. USS Mason expended 3 SM-6, 2 SM-2, and 19 rounds of 5-inch ammunition. USS Thomas Hudner expended 4 ESSM and 1 Nulka decoy. 1 Iranian relay ship was disabled and later sank. 4 explosive drone boats were destroyed. 6 cruise missiles failed to reach the screen. 4 ballistic missiles missed their intended target. At 5:02, American aircraft struck 2 coastal launcher sites near Jask with GBU-3 1J and destroyed 3 transporter erector launchers identified by infrared follow-on surveillance. Iran's plan had been precise. It was not to sink a carrier in open water with one dramatic hit. It was to use a visible attack to force the American defense into a predictable pattern, feed that pattern into a hidden targeting chain, break the blockade in its first hour, and prove that the United States could be pushed off station by a layered coastal strike. It failed for one reason. The strike group stopped fighting the first attack in time to see the second one. The carrier survived. The blockade survived. The launchers were destroyed. The relay was destroyed. The recovery lane stayed open. And when the after-action logs were written, the most important line did not belong to the admiral, the fighter pilots, or the destroyer captains. It belonged to Chief Warrant Officer Leah Ortega, who had seen the pattern at 1:26, filed it when nobody needed it, and understood before anyone else that the ship under attack was not the real target.